I quit making my dream game, and it was the best decision I could have made. How does that make any sense? Let me explain. I've always wanted to make some form of zombie survival game, and this idea has gone through many different iterations. The one that I always wanted to make was a combination of RimWorld and Enter the Gungeon. Build a base for your survivors to inhabit, and when ready, send them out on expeditions and take control in a twin stick style shooter. I tried starting this project a few times back when I didn't have too much experience, and it always failed. But last year, I started a project called Among the Graves. This is where I was going to focus on the twin stick aspect of the game, making a round based zombie survival similar to Call of Duty Zombies. And I got all the basic mechanics in, all the shooting, the zombie spawning, basic barriers, turrets, survivors, it was all there, and the gameplay worked. But once I got past that, the project had nothing. I was slowly implementing things like interactables, but ultimately it was going nowhere, and it just became another one of those failed attempts. And I just can't keep carrying on with this cycle. And so, over the last few weeks, I've been making a new, smaller project that I was actually hoping to release by the time this video is out. But because of Google Play's testing requirements before publishing new apps, and also the fact I haven't quite finished it yet, it's not publicly available, but I'll update the description as soon as it is. And I'll make a short about it, so just look out for that. If you want to join the testing group for any potential games I make in the future, I'll leave a link to the Google group where you can request to join as well. So let's go over what I've done to turn this little demo into a completely different, unrecognizable game, and what I still need to do before the full release. This is what Among the Graves now looks like, and the tone and style of the game has shifted so much because I just didn't feel like I could bring the original gritty style to life with my limited art skills. And this simple, more vibrant look offers a bit more to me, and I think it's easier for me to pull off. The player and zombie models actually started as the sprites I made for another project called Warehouse, and I gave them a bit more definition and body shape, as the originals were basically walking thumbs. I also replaced the tile map I was working with, found some weapon assets as a starting point, and dropped a whole bunch of props to decorate the map. I once again made a random color swapping shader, which is basically identical to the one I just made for Zcab, to randomize the characters in the game. Instead of the decals I had for the cars in Zcab, here I have a whole bunch of hairstyles and scarring for the humans and zombies respectively. This is such a simple thing to include, but it really does add a whole lot to the game. The animation style is another thing that I wanted to keep simplified. Instead of drawing frame by frame animations or rigging characters, I simply rotate the sprites, animate the scale to add a bit of bounciness, and reuse the paper-like rotation I've used in other projects. This simplicity is both an artistic style, as they all look cohesive together, but also a huge part of the reason why I was able to get this project overhauled so quickly. As the perspective changed from pure top-down to the side-on view, I had to change a bit of the setup when it comes to aiming and moving, but luckily for me, this was really easy. Instead of rotating an entire sprite around with everything attached to it, I simply rotate an empty object that is a child of the sprite, and it works perfectly. For all of the collisions, I simply shifted the colliders on the units down towards their feet so they could walk behind items, and the tile maps all have custom physics shapes to match. The weapons use a raycast to fire out bullets, which had no visual element, so I used the particle system to create a tracer round. By creating a small burst every time the weapon is fired that moves quickly in the direction of the ray, it gives the effect of a bullet flying through the sky. And if the particles destroy themselves on collision with a zombie, they trigger a second particle effect for the blood splatter. This makes the shooting look really nice and gives the player some much needed visual feedback when they hit a target. The weapons had support for burst fire, but no way to fire out multiple pellets like a shotgun, so I added this. In the weapon data, there's a new stat for how many pellets fire out at once, with most guns obviously only firing 1, and the new shotgun firing 6. How it works is pretty simple. In the weapon controller, it just loops through the bullet firing for every pellet, with each one having its own damage and drop off. I also realised when working on this, the bullet kept hitting the player's own hitbox, causing the bullet to drop off before going through any enemies or surfaces. To fix this, I just added a check to ignore the owner's hitbox so this doesn't happen anymore. In the initial project, I opted for a point system pulled straight from COD Zombies, but the first thing I did this time around was chucked it straight in the bin to streamline the gameplay and instead gear can just be found around the map, ready to use. For items that are reusable, they have a cooldown, so you couldn't just spam the medkits for example, but weapon pickups and other items would just be scattered around. The main gameplay loop is pretty simple. You spawn in and have 60 seconds to find some gear before the zombies start attacking. Maybe you find a house with a medicine cabinet in, maybe you find an old Kalashnikov lying in a park somewhere, who knows, but you better hope you find something. Once the zombies start attacking, it's best to stay inside somewhere with cover. After you've taken down all the zombies, you get another break to find more gear. I really like the idea of the zombies swarming and overwhelming you, forcing the player to stay inside or look for areas that can limit the directions the zombies come from. However, if you get stuck in a room with no ammo, you're likely to die. Just balancing the ammo you have with the health and damage that the zombies have is quite tricky, but I think the game plays quite nicely in its current state, and all of the guns are usable in their own way. For this new mobile version of the game, I needed to translate the control scheme for a touchscreen, and here's what I've gone for. For the movement, I added a classic on-screen joystick, which works perfectly, but decided against this for the shooting, and instead opted for an auto-aim system. If a zombie comes within range, the player will automatically lock on and fire at them, similar to what you'd see in games like Brotato. On screen will be two buttons, one for interacting with objects and another for reloading. The control scheme is so simple it could even be played on a Game Boy. And to accommodate for the strange people that want to flip the buttons around, I set it up in the settings menu. You can invert the buttons and joystick side. All of this was an absolute nightmare to set up, and that's basically all down to me not supporting this whenever I wrote some of the underlying code, and all the bloat that was in there interfering with most of the new stuff. Unity's new input system, that's not new but that's still what people call it, is for the most part a massive upgrade to the old one, using event-driven actions, allowing you to easily map out different input devices to the same control, and it does this really well. But the way action maps and schemes are handled can be slightly iffy. So this input system has a nice component for on-screen joysticks and buttons, and how they work is they simulate a physical controller in the action map. So the joystick pretends to be the left stick on a controller, and the buttons are A and X. That sounds really easy, except when using either a mouse or touchscreen to move and press these buttons, the input device keeps switching and pulling focus, so it was sending cancel actions every time. So the movement would randomly reset to 0, and they were basically fighting each other. After hours of trying to sort it out nicely, the outcome I landed on was basically to make a separate scheme for the simplified controls, and just switch off the other one completely. It meant having duplicate events firing to the same place, but it worked, and that's all I care about really. There's probably more underlying issues in here, but the main thing is it runs. I was also having this really fun issue where if I were to use Unity Remote to test the game in the editor with my phone, it would completely crash the engine altogether. It's nothing to do with the game or the phone as a build would run, but testing it was a no-go. So that means every time I want to change something and see if it works on my phone, I have to build it completely first, which only takes about a minute or two, but it's still annoying. The final weird thing is that all of the textures were completely messed up, and that was down to the fact that the sprite atlas was too big, because I still had a lot of unused assets in there, and it caused all these weird missing nodes to pop up. I shrunk the atlas down to a normal size, and it was all good. After fighting all of this, the game runs just fine on a mobile device. So what is still missing from the official release of the game? Well, the big thing is simply adding more content to the map. I wanted to design a few areas that each play a little differently to the usual gameplay, with environmental hazards, unique gear, and just an overall range of experience to change up from game to game. However, I want this project to stay small, be released and finished without any doubt in its future development, so I think I'll limit this to what I already have mapped out. And that is Among the Graves, available soon on the Google Play Store, so if you have an Android device, be sure to check it out. There'll be a link in the description as soon as it's published. The game is completely free with no microtransactions or any forced adverts, so you can enjoy the game as you please. Let me know what your thoughts are on it, and make sure to let me know if there's any glaring issues or bugs that need fixing. I'm sure there will be a few. And that's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoy the game. Leave a comment down below. Make sure to like this video and subscribe. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.